So this one is crazy. A number of people have been asking, why aren't there any protests for Gaza under Trump? Well, there are. There have been a couple, and I've covered them on the show. And I'm going to cover one more recently that just happened the other day. And this was at Columbia University, where pro-Palestinian protesters occupied the library on campus, and over 78 people were arrested. It turned into a straight out brawl in New York City. We'll go ahead and get into that clip here. Check it out.
And some breaking news to tell you about right now. Within the last few minutes, Columbia University directing NYPD onto their campus to remove protesters who refuse to leave the school's library. Now, you can see police officers, some of them even in riot gear, removing some of those students in zip ties. And right outside, clashes between police and protesters turned violent with those heavy metal barriers being pushed into the air. And this is what the scene looked like inside a Butler library a little bit earlier. Students protesting in a standoff with school public safety officers. The school saying two of those officers were hurt. Outside, a large group of students gathered earlier, attempting to force their way into the library. Remember, the school was the site of those encampments last year protesting Israel's war in Gaza, now a major target of President Trump over allegations of anti-Semitism. Let's get right over to NBC's Emily Aketa over at Columbia University right now. Emily, I saw something happening behind you right before we came to you. What's the situation looking like right now, and how many people have been removed?
Well, Gotti, those arrests are still underway as we speak. So far, I've counted 78 people ushered out by the NYPD of the library, which you can see behind me just ahead of finals week. They're largely walked out in twos, flanked by police, their hands behind their back, tied with zip ties. One protester had just shouted "Free Palestine" as they have been ushered out by the police. This comes after demonstrations flooded into the school's library earlier this afternoon. Columbia University posting a series of updates and statements, first saying that for the protesters who refuse to leave, who refuse to provide identification and disperse, they could face possible arrest. Well, several hours later, they called in the NYPD, and that is what you see behind me. There are barricades, there are special response teams who have been going in and out of the library that university officials say have been occupied by protesters. It's not just tension spilling over inside of the campus, but also outside, maybe about 50 yards or so from where I'm standing. You might even be able to make out the demonstration still underway right now. But earlier, there were some serious physical clashes between pro-Palestinian protesters and police. Police trying to use these barricades you'll see behind me to push people back. And then
I have to pause here for just a second because I want you to see this scene. Okay. So first and foremost, Columbia University, the history shows that students have occupied halls on campus before when they were protesting against apartheid in South Africa. This isn't new, right? The media wants you to believe that. This is why it's always important to know history. But I want you to look at this image because this reminds me of something that I've been watching recently. I started watching this docuseries about the Vietnam War, and I haven't finished it yet. I'm on part 2. And I got to tell you, I need to bring on a guest that is an expert about the Vietnam War and the protests. If you know of someone in that area, let me know. Because I'm noticing a lot of similarities between the Vietnam War and the genocide in Gaza. And by those similarities, I mean like what's happening in the United States. This image right here in particular looks very familiar to me. It looks similar to other images that I saw during the Vietnam War protests in this country. Don't forget, during the Vietnam War, the protests started on campuses first, and then larger communities joined. Don't forget, during the Vietnam War protests, the cops were against the protesters, whether they were peaceful or not. And this is what I was trying to tell people. Police serve the empire. They're not there to really serve the greater good. Because if you were there to serve the greater good, you would understand and support people protesting against the Vietnam War. If you were really there for support, you would understand and support these kids protesting against the genocide. So there is a connection. There's a gentleman that's going to be coming on to the show. I'm recording an interview with him on Friday. He's going to be coming on. His name is Alec. He just wrote a book called Propaganda. And he has made the connection between the police and the media and the politicians and these wars. All of this is connected. And so all of these entities work together to try to silence the masses, to try to brainwash the masses, etc. I don't see New York police officers use this kind of force on murderers. Now, all these cops can show up and play bad in front of kids protesting, but they can't find the guy who just killed people. Answer that for me. Why can't they figure that out? Why can't they use our tax dollars to find the people who are out there murdering people? But if there's a protest, everybody can drop what they're doing and show up, and they can try to harass and threaten and instill fear in these kids who were doing exactly what happened during the protests against South Africa's apartheid. This is Columbia University. This happened on Wednesday. Yes, the protests are still happening. Corporate media just isn't covering them as much. That's why people don't think they're happening. Let's continue.
The protesters then pushing back and forth there. Earlier today, it was campus police security officers who have been trying to hold this building on lockdown. And the university said that 2 campus officers were injured as they say some pro-Palestinian protesters had tried to force their way into the library, Gotti. This all comes amid President Trump, the Trump administration's crackdown on what they call harassment of Jewish American students, even cutting hundreds of millions of dollars of funding to federal funding to Columbia University, trying to stem pro-Palestinian protests, Scotty.
I mean, and so the protests that are there right now, the ones that we could hear chanting in the background, is it still a very sizable group, or does it seem like things are starting to disperse?
It is a sizable group outside of campus. It's hard to say how many people are still in here. Like I mentioned, there were more than 70 people that have been arrested. I've seen social media posts estimating 100 people, at least 100 people had gotten into the building. So it's unclear how many people may still be in the library, but outside we continue to see protests. They continue to move throughout the campus. You hear those calls for divestment from Israeli-backed companies from the school and protection from ICE on campus, Gotti, as we've heard before. Columbia University posting a statement that reads in part, disruptions to our academic activities will not be tolerated and are violations of our rules and policies. This is especially unacceptable while our students study and prepare for final exams. Mayor Eric Adams also posting to social media, addressing parents, urging parents to call their kids if they're being apart, saying that breaking the law is not okay.
So I would say that these students are exercising their First Amendment right. Again, this has happened at Columbia University before. And I think Patrick here has a good point. Why do people still go to that school? That's a good question. I'm curious to see what their enrollment will be like for fall. Curious to see. It's not just Columbia, but that's a good question. Now, Status Quo was actually there on the ground, and I want to show you what they captured. NYPD rough up and arrest pro-Palestinian student outside Columbia University. You guys have got to see this. There was actually someone going out on a stretcher. Watch this.
Get out of the street! Get out of the street! Back up! Back up! Back up! Back up! Get out of the street! Back up! Back up! Back up! Back up! Get off his back! Get off his back! Back up! Back up! Back up! Back up!
So do you see the way that the police are handling the student? Now I want to ask you guys a question. Did this kid kill anybody? Did this kid physically hurt a person? Because from what I understand, they didn't. This is the police pushing these students around, trying to instill fear in them and show them, oh, you think you're a tough guy? We're the tough guys. Don't mess with us. Don't forget who trains the NYPD. The NYPD is trained by the IDF. All of this is connected. This is the NYPD trying to protect Israel. And let me ask you a question. If it is really about discrimination, if it's really about harassment, oppression, as the politicians are trying to say, why is it that when people were protesting against police brutality, when they were protesting against discrimination, why is it that the police were on the side of the people doing the killing and discrimination? Because the same way you see these police officers treating the pro-Palestinian protesters, that's the same way they treated the BLM protesters, including the peaceful ones. I was there. I know. Even the peaceful ones, that's the same way they treated them. So the police, when you hear these police officers, and you're going to hear the statement from Eric Adams, when you hear them say, we will not tolerate this type of behavior, and they're harassing other students or whatever, that you can call BS on that, because they didn't care a damn when people were harassing Black students. They didn't give a damn. When people are harassing Black people, they do not give a damn. It is not about that. This is not an oppression Olympics. What this is really about is the police operating for the state of Israel. Direct line, trained by the IDF. And they continue to use those same actions that they learned from them against Americans. Right here on the street. Right here on the street. Not to mention, as I've said before, many of the protesters are Jewish Americans. That's how you know it's a joke. This is all a joke, you guys. But the way that they are handling this kid is absolutely ridiculous.
Back up! Back up! Back up! Back up! Stay behind me. Back up! Look at my shoe, man! You're breaking my fucking arm. So move! Back up!
Did you hear that? So the kid said, you're breaking my arm, and the cop said, so move. This whole tough guy routine. And when they come face to face with real, like, people who have actually murdered people, when they come face to face with murderers, they don't act like this. A lot of times they run away. They're acting like bullies at this point. These kids, there's no weapon. These kids don't have weapons.
Back up, please. Back up. Shame on you! Shame on you! Fuck you, pigs!
All of this for a teeny tiny state here called Israel, where everybody gets free healthcare and free college. Look how they're willing to go above and beyond for them. Eric Adams, of course, had to respond to this. I want you to see what he had to say.
Fix the recurring problem here.
Yeah, and I think that's important what you said. Crime has decreased. The last quarter, the lowest number of shooters in recorded history. Do we have these high-profile cases with 8.5 million people? Yes. What you expect from the police department is to make apprehension. We did it immediately. A large number of gang members who not only assaulted police officers but carried out about 20 robberies in this city. Repeated offenders, some of them were arrested 8 and 9 times. We're doing our job, and that is apprehend, keep the peace. Now it's time for the other part of the criminal justice system to do their job. Lawmakers, judges, making sure we don't have these repeat offenders coming on our streets.
And Mayor Adams, has the Trump administration relayed to you that they'd like to accelerate the pace of deportation from New York? And if so, how would the city be involved in that?
No, we have not received any communication of that magnitude. The law is clear of what we can do and what we can't do. We collaborated with the ICE and HSI and others when we took down 27 gang members that were known for sex trafficking, carrying guns, and committing crimes. But when it comes down to deportation, the law does not allow a city employee to collaborate on deportation.
Would you like to see that law changed in the city?
There's many laws I would like to see. I would like to see us expand how do we deal with people who commit crimes. Those individuals who are doing right, serving the city, trying to pursue the American dream, like many immigrants have done before them. I'm in support of that, and we're going to continue to be supportive of those who are law-abiding citizens. I want to go after those who are going after innocent people in the city.
So he told the parents to call Columbia, et cetera. And I want to bring up a point that he made here when he talks about, criminals and all of that jive, right? Like a crime. According to Eric Adams' recent statements and behavior, and especially the NYPD behavior, you guys consider protesting to be a crime. Even when there was the pro-Palestinian protests in Chicago outside the DNC convention, Chicago had the streets lined up with police officers harassing people who were peacefully protesting. The video footage I saw showed cops pushing against protesters who kept their hands to themselves. And this is why I say we really got to check back in and see what happened during the Vietnam War and the protests during that point in time. And I say this because, guys, there's a lot of similarities, even when it comes to the presidential elections during that time. There are similarities between LBJ and Biden during that time. If you look at LBJ deciding, I'm not going to run for re-election, Joe Biden deciding he wasn't going to run, and Kamala stepping in, there's comparison there between Nixon and Donald Trump, coming in and what they promised, et cetera. But when you look at the protests and the actions that were taken, the Vietnam War protests were huge throughout the country, and the police were very militant towards the protesters. And in many cases that I saw and that I learned about recently watching this docuseries, were escalated by the police, not by the protesters. So we have to look back at history so that we can see that nothing is new under the sun, as my grandmother used to say. A lot of things are just a repetition of history. It's just over a different issue sometimes. So I definitely want to talk to someone about that, because I kind of wonder, like, where do we go from here? But the way they were treating those kids, those college students, all I have to say is holy crap. Holy crap. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.